Yeah, absolutely. So I did want to take it back though to start. So obviously, growing up in a baseball family with your father, Phil Nevin, what's the earliest thing that you can remember about being around the game? Whether like being in and out of a clubhouse, maybe running around the backfields. What's the earliest thing you can think that you can remember?
Yeah, I bet you Rip can attest this too. But you're always rooting for Dad's team when it means you get to go in the clubhouse afterwards. So honestly, it didn't matter what he did any one of those games. I just wanted the Padres. He was mainly with the Padres when I was growing up. I just wanted the Padres to win because that way I could go down, hang out with the boys after the game, enjoy a win with them. And that's definitely probably where I fell in love with the game, honestly.
Absolutely. I mean, so your dad played until you were 9, then he coached after. But like, what was that experience like growing up? Having him like gone for long periods of time. Like, what was the family dynamic like during that time?
Yeah, so fortunately enough, he was in San Diego for most of and established for most of what I remember. That 2000 to 2006 range, I was 3 to 10, um, and just being able to be in the same area all year long, off season and during the season, was great. Spring training, uh, not too long. We would go during spring break for us for school, and so he was gone, for road trips and stuff. But for the most part, it was just a couple weeks at a time, and he'd be right back home. So we were really fortunate in that regard. As I'm learning now as a player, it doesn't always work out that great, being able to be at home for majority of the year.
I love that. And plus, like, and this is probably where Ryan can jump in too, where it's like when you started playing baseball yourself, like, was there any like extra pressure to perform or like internal or external factors that kind of affected the baseball journey for yourself?
Yeah, not for my dad ever. It's just kind of a sense of responsibility. Like you want to kind of live up to what people think they might see in you. But my dad was always great with making sure that it didn't come from him. He always wanted me to play other sports, push me to do other things. I just happened to take a liking to baseball. But yeah, not from him. Just the normal stuff you hear, especially in San Diego, growing up with the Nevin name in that time frame. But it was nothing I ever dreaded. I was always really proud of my dad and my family. So it was something I took with me, and I tried to make myself better out of it.
And Ryan too, like I imagine like, the coaching that took place, like, in the backyard, I feel like that has to be like one of the coolest experiences to have somebody as talented as both of your fathers were, just having that person be the one to teach you the game. Like that had to be like the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, I think it's cool where I think it's kind of when you look back, I think at the time when you're a kid, that's, like Nev, you probably, that's how I felt at least, is when you went in, you were excited to be in the locker room because it was fun. It was cool, but you didn't really know anything differently. It was just an experience. You got to be at work with your dad,
Yeah,
and to see the guys. And for me, it's like that was just the cool part, but it wasn't kind of, wow, this guy's really good at baseball. This is just my dad and just another element of exposure. But I mean, now I think, I mean, you could touch on it too, but that's just kind of how I felt. It was, you appreciate the lessons from your father in the game as you get older, but at that young of an age, you're just kind of valuing,
yeah,
just time with dad.
yeah. The lessons aren't really learned. Sit down. Here's your lesson. It's just kind of absorbing what's around you, really. Um, Rip, you were around plenty of Hall of Famers in Baltimore, San Diego too, with Trevor Hoffman, Tony Gwynn, and they were basically just dad's friends. They weren't these idol figures of that you get starstruck. I just grew up around them. So it definitely helped when I got into baseball of realizing how everybody is human and everybody is just playing baseball. Really, there's obviously some that are better than others, but I think the lessons learned are kind of just the experiences that go with it, and just observing people at the top of their craft and enjoying what they have to offer.
Was there one thing that maybe like Tyler, that maybe like your dad like tried to instill in you? Maybe it doesn't have to be like a phrase or like a saying or anything like that, but like the way, like how you play the game right, or like I'm sure that had to be a big part of growing up with him as your father.
Yeah, again, nothing that he sat down and tried to
Yeah.
ingrain into me, but just watching him, how he interacted with the people in the clubhouse, how they went about their business, how he went about his business. It was really cool looking back, something I didn't probably notice in the time, but definitely stuck with me subliminally. But now looking back, like that's kind of what sticks out the most, I would say.
Yeah.
And just it's really cool when I get to think about those experiences. And not that I took them for granted, but I would have loved to be back in that moment to really fully understand what was happening in front of me and enjoy it that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like
go ahead, Brian.
you're a sponge. You're a sponge, Justin. Like at those times where, yeah, they might not all stick out, but I remember personally, I started doing things as I got older because I saw my dad do it, and not because he taught me it. It was just the certain mannerisms and how they carried themselves, and that was a small thing. One I knew that was actually a pet peeve of my dad is when you pick up balls in the cage, of the efficiency of picking up the balls in the cage, and that was a little, and that like for me is looking at, I'm like, well, that's why are you getting so caught up with that? Like that bothered me. And later, it's like that wasn't a lesson. That was just him getting mad. So each time as I got older, it's like, all right, I got to be efficient with picking up these balls because it's wasted time. If it's wasted time, I could have this done, be ready for another round. And that's a little thing. Or the simple nature of after a game and taking the time to talk to somebody that just spent money to watch you play. And, that was just thing that I watched. I'm like, oh, like that's cool. He's spending time. And as a kid, I'm like, oh, I want to go in the locker room and like eat ice cream and just run around the training room or whatnot. But as I got older and you see the same reactions of what, our fathers did, and you can see the joy that those families had to come see. Like, I think those are moments. And just wanted to say that because I think like that's where I feel like the whole baseball nature of growing up comes from, of what we experienced. It was the sponge effect. And then as we got older, we're like, holy shirts and pants, maybe we were a little bit more like our dads than we thought.
Getting a lot of that these days, especially, my dad played for the Tigers for a little bit, just a couple years, but there's still some guys that were around then that are here now. And he also, when he got back into the game, his first job back into affiliated baseball was managing for AA and AAA for a combined 4 years for the Tigers. And now there's a few of his players that at that time I was 13, 14, 15, being in those locker rooms, observing those games. And some of those players are now coaches in the system, which is kind of funny and kind of cool to see it all come full circle. So I'm enjoying the spring training.